Let's get started. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-5, Supplementary Estimates A, 2018-19, Votes 1A, 5A, 10A under the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development, and Votes 1A, 5A, and 10A under Department of Indigenous Services Canada referred to the committee on Wednesday, October 24th, 2018. So we are the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs, and we will have the opportunity to hear from two ministers that we deal with directly. And before we get started, we always recognize the fact that we're in a process of truth and reconciliation in Canada, and that in fact these Parliament buildings are on unceded Algonquin territory. We do that when we are anywhere in Canada and encourage all Canadians to review the history of settlement and our relationship with our Indigenous peoples. So today we start off with the Honourable Carolyn Bennett, the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. Welcome once again to our committee.
Thank you. Great to be back, and thank you, Madam Chair, for inviting us to be here with you all today. J'aimerais tout d'abord souligner que nous...
I would first of all like to, as you have said, I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are here together on traditional territory of the Algonquin people.
The Supplementary Estimates A for the Department of Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, specifically as they relate to my responsibilities as Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. I'm joined by Daniel Watson, our new Deputy Minister, that I don't think has been with us here before, and who comes from Parks Canada, so knows lots about reconciliation, and Alex Lacroni, Chief Finance Results and Delivery Officer, both for Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada. So we're appearing in the context of the ongoing changes to the departmental organization and ministerial responsibilities to fulfill our commitment to replace the colonial structures that were conceived at another time for a different kind of relationship. As you know, to better support our government's commitment to renew relationships with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis on a foundation of recognition and implementation of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership, as the Prime Minister put into the mandate letters of all ministers, the Prime Minister announced the dissolution of the old Department of Indigenous and Northern Affairs in August of 2017. The dissolution of Indigenous Northern Affairs Canada reflects the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, and the two new departments we believe are already serving the distinct needs of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis better. First Nations Inuit Health Branch has already been integrated into the new Department of Indigenous Services, and Minister Phil Pott, who you will be hearing from later today, is focused on improving outcomes for Indigenous peoples by delivering more effective distinctions-based services, as well as a focus on prevention. I'm focused on advancing reconciliation with Indigenous peoples by redressing long-standing historical injustices, while accelerating our work to support First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples to implement their visions of self-determination.
We are committed to moving from a denial of rights approach to one that recognizes and affirms rights.
We are working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples to create a new recognition implementation of Indigenous rights framework. Among the points of consensus from Indigenous partners is the framework should include accountability measures to ensure Canada is fully implementing Indigenous treaties and rights and acting transparently. Our continuing engagement is building upon the more than 100 sessions which I have personally attended with more than 1,700 participants and have been held coast to coast to coast to ensure the framework reflects the views of Indigenous peoples. Nous consultons continuellement.
Engagement with our partners is ongoing, and we're moving forward together. We are absolutely determined to get this right.
Minister LeBlanc assumed responsibility to lead our government's work in the North, including the new Arctic policy for Canada. I remain focused on strengthening and renewing the relationship between the federal government and the Indigenous peoples of the North. Minister LeBlanc and I work very closely together to ensure Northern policy is developed by Northerners for Northerners and that it reflects the unique perspectives of Indigenous peoples in the North in a manner that respects their distinct cultural traditions and identities. These and other initiatives are ensuring that we close the socioeconomic gap between Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous Canadians, and are advancing reconciliation and are making foundational changes to accelerate self-determination. The supplementary estimates A reflect a net increase of $1.7 billion, which brings the total appropriation for 2018-19 for the department to $4.9 billion. The vast majority of these requested funds are to resolve long-standing litigation and support concrete self-determination measures, including the $155 million for the 60s Scoop settlement, $666 million for special claims under the Williams Treaty, $239 million for the Little Red River Cree Nation agricultural benefits specific claim, and $53.9 million for other out-of-court settlements. $116 million is to be reprofiled back to the specifics claim settlement fund, and $129 million to support the implementation of the government-to-government relationship with the Manitoba Métis Federation. Le rafle des années 60 est un chapitre.
The 60s Scoop is a dark and painful chapter in Canada's history.
Will fund the approved settlement, which resolves the issues raised by the longest-standing case of ongoing litigation and similar class actions. 60 Scoop survivors have also identified their desire to reconnect with their communities, and that's why the settlement includes the $50 million for the Foundation for Healing, Commemoration, Education, and Language and Culture. Our government knows that there are other claims that remain unresolved, and we are committed to addressing the remaining harm suffered by other Indigenous children as a result of the 60s Scoop. The funding of $666 million is to make settlement payments to the 7 Williams Treaties First Nations, which will resolve the Alderville litigation. The Williams Treaties First Nations have been fighting in court for more than 25 years to redress injustices involving compensation, land, and harvesting rights dating back to 1923. Earlier this month, the settlement of these long-standing claims was celebrated at a moving ceremony I was honored to attend with the Williams Treaty Chief, community members, and the Government of Ontario. Achieved through dialogue and in partnership, it includes financial compensation, recognition of treaty harvesting rights, and entitlement to add additional reserve land. Le Canada et l'Ontario.
Canada and Ontario also apologize for the negative impacts of these treaties.
Rocca said, this settlement agreement marks the beginning of healing for our people. Canada has also been negotiating with 21 First Nations to resolve specific claims alleging that Canada failed to provide agricultural benefits under Treaty 8. Des accords ont été signés avec 18.
Agreements have been signed with 18 First Nations, and funds have been paid.
Dollars in supplementary estimates is to fund the settlement with Little Red River Cree Nation, which is one of 3 of remaining First Nations still to receive payment out of the 21. As these concrete examples show, our government understands that negotiation, rather than litigation, is the best way to right historical wrongs and settle past grievances. I also think it's important to highlight that these settlements resolve legal liabilities of the Government of Canada. We believe that resolving litigation out of court is not only the right thing to do, but the most responsible and effective way to manage taxpayers' dollars. Negotiated settlements are not only often less costly, but are able to achieve investments in healing, commemoration, wellness, and culture initiatives in addition to the compensation. Nous allons aussi de l'avant avec.
We are also moving forward with renewed nation-to-nation, government-to-government, and Inuit to Crown relationships.
$29 million is for the implementation of a renewed government-to-government relationship with the Manitoba Métis Federation. This includes funding to support governance capacity to assist the Manitoba Métis Federation in their transition from a corporate entity to a government and to implement its vision of greater self-determination. Its negotiations with the Government of Canada represent the first self-government negotiations between Canada and a Métis collective south of 60, and will include discussions to establish a long-term self-government fiscal relationship. The funding requested through Supplementary Estimates A support our government's commitment to honor treaties, resolve claims through negotiations, and accelerating Indigenous self-determination. I urge you to approve these supplementary estimates, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Minister Bennett. Right on time. And we'll open up the questioning with MP Mike Bosio.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Minister, for making the time once again, as you have so often, to come to our committee and hear the questions of the committee and some of the expanding on some of your remarks. And speaking of your remarks, you outline your broad approach to the rights recognition and implementation framework. The government said from day one that it would renew the relationship with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples based on the recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. We have heard a strong expectation from Indigenous partners that the framework be properly co-developed. There seems to be a desire for continued engagement. As the National Chief said, Indigenous groups aren't necessarily saying no to the framework, but they do want to make sure they are not rushed. Members of the committee who presumably will be involved in the review of any legislation are also very interested in the timing of the process. Can you update us on how long you think the consultation process will take and when we will likely see legislation introduced?
Thank you for the question, Mike. I think it's really important that if we look at what the Prime Minister spoke about in the House of Commons on February 14th, that the framework was to have both policy as well as legislation. And so I don't think there's any question that people want us to change these policies that are terribly flawed. The comprehensive claims policy, the specific claims policy, and the inherent right policy. And we are working with our partners to move forward on those now, and I think a lot of people feel that the sooner those changes are made, the sooner that the impediments are out of their path to self-determination. On the legislation piece, there are things that self-governing nations and the Land Claims Coalition have been asking for a very long time. Changes to the Interpretation Act, perhaps putting in place a dispute resolution framework, or what I talked about in my remarks. The need for treaty oversight, what in the UN Declaration called treaty violation, but how do we hold Canada to account in when we sign an agreement to make sure that takes place? And so I think that we will work on that kind of co-development, on that kind of legislation at the same time, and that tends to be with the self-determining nations, the Inuit as well as the Métis. On the First Nations, the Indian Act bans, I think that it's quite clear that National Chief Bellegarde and the Indian Act bans within the AFN want the time to co-develop any legislation that would affect them. But we are very, very clear that nothing will be imposed on anyone, and at the the legislation in its inception was to hold Canada to account in the way that we end up being accountable to our partners with the agreements that we have signed with them.
There seems to be a number of views out there about what the framework is and what it's meant to do. I know you touched on a few aspects of it there in your comments just now, but can you please explain to the committee what the framework is meant to accomplish, and just as important, what the framework will not do?
And so the framework is that the movement on the what have been the flawed policies. So changing and getting the problems removed from what was the comprehensive claims policy, the specific claims policy, inherent right policy. The things that the Prime Minister talked about in February 14th, where we actually have to move from a denial of rights approach where people had to claim their rights and then go to court to prove those rights. We are moving to an approach that means that those rights are recognized, they're Section 35 rights recognized right up front, and then we go to the table to discuss how communities want to exercise and implement those rights. So that's what is the new approach, and but it is not to define rights or to enforce any rights, as I think there is some misinformation out there, and it certainly isn't to describe what a nation is or what their governments would be. That will be up to nations to decide themselves.
So it's not just about moving towards self-determination as quickly as we possibly can to offload Canada's responsibilities. This actually is also working towards a level of a certainty of accountability of the Canadian government to honor those agreements once they've been in place.
That is correct. And then there are certain places where we are actually correcting previous agreements that were signed that had things like cede and surrender and extinguishment in what a previous agreement entailed. And so, say for the Gwich'in Nation, there's two processes going on. One is their process to self-determination, but also they are modernizing their treaty to make sure that cede and surrender and those real I think barriers to others wanting to embark on the path of self-determination, those are being eliminated. We are eliminating them in practice at the tables where that are the rights recognition tables, but we need to actually have them removed in policy and or legislation.
Less than a minute, 30 seconds.
No, I guess I'll end it there then. I don't think there's enough time to really get into the next question.
Questioning now moves to MP Cathy McLeod.
Thank you, Minister, and always appreciate when you come here. But I do have to say this committee's been kind of lonely and underutilized. There was significant commitments by your government in terms of a whole host of areas that we have been expecting. Just to name a few: child welfare legislation, nowhere to be seen. Indigenous Language Act, nowhere to be seen. You've talked about the rights and recognition framework, and I want to talk, you promised, the Prime Minister stood up in Parliament and said, it is our firm intention to have the framework introduced later this year and implemented. I would say that's an overpromise, under-delivery. The other thing he actually promised to do was that not only was it going to be talking with First Nations and engaging, but also talking to civil society, industry, and the business community. Has there been any work done in terms of that conversation?
I thank you for the question, and I think that it's important that we do point out that there are the pieces of legislation coming forward on child and family services and on Indigenous languages in terms of protecting and revitalizing. There will be, in terms of other calls to action, a change in the oath of citizenship, the Reconciliation Council, which will address 4 of the calls to action. So there are pieces of legislation that are coming forward. We are, as we go, I think that that there is no question that we have to do a better job with the 95% of Canadians not from an Indigenous background. I've certainly been interested in your help as parliamentarians as to how we can make sure that all Canadians feel part of this. This was the criticism with the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People, that Canadians didn't necessarily feel part of it or understand it. We did do a roundtable in Dryden anti-racism with the Dryden Anti-Racism Network. We would love to be able to do more of that, but certainly that there were Natural Resources Canada did their senior level sessions with industry, and they will be doing even more.
Thank you. The additions to reserve was buried in the budget. It was Division 19. I asked that we look at that at this committee, and of course, I was denied that opportunity to have any conversation around Section 19. So again, buried in the budget, no opportunity to look at this piece of legislation. The Senate, of course, did have some opportunities, and of course, what happened when it went to the Senate was some of the major proponents, some of the people that would be most impacted said they had no idea that was coming down the pipe. So I guess my question, Minister, is when you have people that are going to be impacted by legislation, is bearing it in a budget bill and having people that are most impacted by it say, I had no idea it was coming, and chiefs across this country said, well, I got a letter, but I really didn't know what it meant. Is this your idea of what proper consultation is before you introduce legislation in this House, is to bury it in a budget bill, not allow Indigenous Affairs Committee to look at it, and not even talk to the proponents of the legislation?
Well, Kathy, I think that even when I sat where you were sitting, or maybe I was down here as the third party, at this committee, the problems and the slowness with which ATRs are accomplished is still an issue.
We're not questioning that it needed changing. But what I am questioning is not having it in the budget, contrary to your promises, burying it in a budget bill and not allowing proper scrutiny by us. And from all appearances, having that proper scrutiny would have enabled us to see that indeed proper consultation, which you committed to as a government, has not been done.
I think that most of the problems with the ATR have been administrative. That it is that our government is too slow, and previous governments have been too slow in actually making the changes. That these are quite often, Kathy, where a First Nation has purchased a piece of property, and then it's up to us to make that reserve land, and it really hinders their economic development.
I'm not questioning that, but when you have the manager,
but I will tell you that Dr. Philpott is working very hard on that, as it falls within her responsibilities with Indian Act bands, and
so that leads me to the next question. Thank you, Minister. Is there was going to be legislation to separate the two departments. I understand there was an order in council that we, of course, have not been privy to in any form. Is it accurate that you still have to sign off on everything in the department in terms of some of the measures that go ahead as the, I guess, the senior minister, because we haven't had proper legislation tabled?
As you know, that as we continue to consult on where things are best placed, and obviously moving First Nations Inuit Health Branch over to Dr. Philpott was a very significant piece of work. We needed to consult with the public servants, and I think we're well on our way. But as you know, the order in councils are very clear as to who's responsible each area is.
You still have to sign.
There are certain things, very few things that we sign, in the same way that
But you do have to as senior
that
minister.
Minister LeBlanc and I are working together on things.
So in the supplementary estimates, there is significant additional dollars for the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's Inquiry. And I do actually have to, they asked for 2 years and $50 million. You gave them 6 months and $38 million. So first of all, that's a little bit doesn't make logical sense. But I think it's also important to look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, who also had very difficult work that they had to do, took 6 years and spent $60 million, and again did important work. They came out with an amazing report. So 2.5 years, an extra $38 million. It makes no sense when they were asking for 50, but they weren't given that extra year and a half. So are you willing to actually share the details of how that money has been used, the first 50, and also the details of the next 38?
Run out on that questioning block of time,
You
and
could
it
say yes.
moves
Yeah.
on to.
Are you sure you don't want the answer, Madam Chair? I'm sure everybody's dying for that.
MP Rachel Blaney may want the answer.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Minister. So it's very interesting to me that you're working on this framework, which your office is calling Recognition and Implementation of Indigenous Rights Framework. It seems to me that Mr. Saganesh tabled a wonderful bill that was voted on in a positive manner in the House that really looked at a framework of rights for Indigenous people across Canada using the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. So I'm just wondering a couple of things. One, why aren't you using this and how is it different? And the other thing is when you speak of having a nation-to-nation relationship with each and every Indigenous community, I want to be really clear, a lot of those communities are very small, and I'm wondering how you're supporting them with the capacity to face that kind of relationship when they're dealing with the Government of Canada.
Thank you very much, and I agree. I think that Romeo Saganesh's bill has been very important to raise the profile of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the fact that Canada would be accountable to report on how we have embraced it and are using that. There are things that will be in the framework that need to be specific for Canada and us righting the wrongs of the past and taking our specific impediments to self-determination out of policies and again putting into legislation the kind of accountability framework that we need for Canada to actually make sure that we are accountable for the agreements that we've signed. It is, I think, important that in our goal of reconstituting nations, that is the excitement around the Anishinaabe Agreement on education, 23 Indian Act bands coming together on an education agreement. Shortly, all of the Anishinaabe Nation will come together on a governance. That's, I think, what we really mean in nation to nation. And I think it is our two jobs of reconstituting the nations and letting nations come together in collectives of their own choosing, and then working with them to a governance of their own choosing in their path to self-determination.
Okay, thank you so much, Minister. Another thing that I see is some discussion around treaty land claims. And, I had one chief talk to me and say, I feel like I'm sitting at the table negotiating my people into poverty. And I think this is the experience of many communities. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you're doing to change that, because it is something that needs to be done. And I also know that the self-governing treaty nations have been very clear and have come and talked to your ministry about having a substantive increase in resources so that they can really get to the tipping point and having their communities be more sustainable. If you could talk a little bit about where the resources for that is and when they're coming.
Thanks again for the question. And I must say that 2 weeks ago, the meeting with the self-governing nations was one of the best meetings I've had in the working together with the government, they now have really, I think, the fruits of their labor in 2 years of work on a collaborative fiscal arrangement that is, again, predictable, adequate for them to be able to look after their people and their land. And so it was an extraordinarily positive meeting. I asked the Grand Chief if I could frame his remarks. It was so positive, and I think it will show people that we're not funding municipal governments. This is language and culture. It's the kind of funding arrangement that they have been asking for, and that we will be able.
So when are the resources coming? When are the resources
Well,
coming?
I think the agreement is there, and then with each of the nations, they will be funded on this new model.
And in terms of the land claims, when you hear leaders saying that they're negotiating their people into poverty, how are you taking a leadership role in making sure that that is not the case?
Well, I think that as you say, that there's the funding aspect, but with these the agreements that we're negotiating now quite often include land in them, like Lubicon or like some of these other major agreements that we're signing, and that's why we need sometimes the partnerships of provinces and territories in terms of their crown land, in terms of the various, because it is. And the kinds of conversations that will go on about resource revenue sharing. And so I think that with this new collaborative fiscal arrangement, we need the self-governing nations to feel that they're being adequately funded with the kind of resources they need, because it needs to be an incentive to have other nations want to do the hard work it takes to get to that place.
So, Minister, the Nuu-chah-nulth have been fighting since 2006 for their Aboriginal fishing rights. I'm just curious, how many times are they required to go through court, be successful again and again, and when are their rights actually going to be recognized? When is that next step happening?
Well, as you know, we don't want to be in court. My job's to get out of court and to try and settle these things as fairly as we can and as timely a fashion as we can, and we look forward to be able to settle that case as soon as possible.
Okay. One of the things that we've heard from numerous Indigenous communities across Canada is that they're still waiting to find out about the Indigenous housing strategy, the national one, and really specific issues. We've just heard recently from people in the Arctic who are just hugely struggling, 15 plus people living in a house, the rampant illness of TB in the community and in the households. And I can think of a community in my riding from Kinkum, where they're having the river is changing because of climate change. So every year they're building a little bit higher off the ground because the river's flooding into their community, and they desperately need support, and they're just not seeing the support that they need. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about that infrastructure component of housing.
Minister.
Well, I think that the issue of infrastructure is huge. There was a huge lag. There was a huge deficit in terms of infrastructure. But I think that you will be able to talk to Dr. Philpott also about within her TB strategy. We know that we cannot get to the bottom of TB unless there's appropriate housing in the north, and that we look forward to the kind of success it's going to take to close those gaps, particularly in housing.
Okay, questioning now moves to MP Yves Robillard.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, I want to thank you for your excellent presentation today and the excellent translation of your speaking notes. The French is impeccable. One key element of your mandate consists in accelerating the self-determination vision of the Aboriginal nations, of the Inuit and the Métis. You have spoken about it in terms of recognition and rights for the whole country. Can you speak further about these tables of coming together, recognition, and what you can do to accelerate self-determination for Indigenous peoples? Thank you so much for your excellent question. This is an issue, self-determination, which is very near to my heart. We have some 70 tables that bring together and work with 20 First Nations, 320 rather. Thank you. And also we have the Métis in Ontario, Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. The tables are absolutely unique. Each table determines their own priorities. The welfare, the well-being of children, I should say, and that represents the concern that each table has for their young people. Some 2/3 of the tables set that as a priority. And then you have the fishery, education. It is always the pathway to self-determination. It is, I believe, really an historic moment that we are seeing with the First Nations communities that are reconstituting their nations, their language, their government, their own laws, their legal practices. I'm very, very optimistic. Thank you. Now, the funding for the Manitoba Métis Federation seems to reflect the strengthening of certain capacities, the reduction of gaps, and the strengthening of self-governance. Can you give me some examples of self-determination that, in your opinion, will arise from this investment that you are making? Thank you for your question. Those investments are targeted through governance. That is to say, the ability for them to establish their own laws. That's very important. To, of course, also have programs that will allow them to maintain their focus on housing and other services. But after these investments are really intended to establish their self-governance. Thank you. Do I still have time? The 2018 budget provides for $1.1 billion over 5 years, rather, to strengthen the capacity of Aboriginal peoples. Those monies will be available to support activities that will allow them to find their way, to find their own path towards self-determination. In your opinion, certainly this is essential for achieving self-determination. Can you give us an assessment of what has already been invested? It's very important. In the past, for funding, the path towards self-determination was based on loans, on loans. But now it is a matter of investing in the table itself to allow for the discussion. It is a better approach, I believe, because the loans can constitute an obstacle. Thank you very much.
Out of time. Excusez-moi. We're moving on to the last round because we started a bit late. So questioning now moves to MP Kevin Waugh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you again, Minister, for coming, along with Deputy Minister Watson. Welcome. Along with you, Lucroni. Thank you for coming. You may recall about a year ago, actually it was November 26th, so 2 days less than a year. My question to start out that day was, and I quote, 2 departments, more staff, more money. Give me an indication of how many more staff we have now, how much more money. Can you give me a quick update back then? Obviously, you've split it into 2. That means we're hiring more, and how much does that cost? So I'll just, if you don't mind, a year ago, you said on November 26th of 2017, one of the corrections I will make is that we're not splitting the department into 2. We are dissolving a department because all the great people who worked in our department had one burden on them. They worked for INAC. INAC is no longer to exist. We will build 2 new departments, bottom up, form following function, as we said, based on their needs. So here we are today, the notice of meeting. I see actually 4, not 2. I see 4. So how does this work, and how much really is it costing Canadian taxpayers? Because a year ago, November 26th, you said 2. Look here, we have 4. Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Indian Affairs and Northern Development now, Minister of Indigenous Services, and now Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs with Mr. LeBlanc as the new lead on that. Please, Minister, fill us in.
At the moment, and from budget 2018, there's been no increase in what we've been carrying out. I do say that we will need more money going forward because the appetite of our partners is so great that we have to be able to keep up with the pace in terms of get particularly on the path to self-determination. That for us to be able to meet as regularly as people need and to have the people to do this. Now, eventually, they will be self-governing. And again, as you know from what the Prime Minister said a year ago, August, that eventually the Department of Indigenous Services will no longer be necessary because those programs and services will be delivered by nations or by Indigenous-led institutions. So as we're in this transition period, at the moment, there's been no increase, but I would be remiss to not say that I hope there will be increased resources so we can do what it says in my mandate letter, accelerate the path to self-determination and not be disappointing nations that want to get on that path.
We were disappointed, and so was the Parliamentary Budget Officer disappointed this past summer as they asked the 2 departments, unable to provide details on their planned spending for infrastructure, as requested by their office. Are these details now available? Because we didn't get them in the summer when you were asked by the PBO.
Yes, they are. I understand they are available now.
Could you share them with us?
Yeah, I think, yes. I think that at that particular time, there were certain aspects of the infrastructure that were under tender, and it would have been inappropriate to release the details of those tenders until it was secured in order for us to be able to to make those decisions in good faith.
Yes. How much did the departments plan to spend on Indigenous and Northern communities as part of this phase 1 of investing in the Canada Plan, And did you exceed that? Or what was the number that we were looking at here? And what have you spent so far? So kind of a three-part thing. What did you think you were going to spend in this Canada Plan of investing? And how much have you actually spent? And are you over?
Go for it.
Yeah, 9 seconds.
Yeah. The infrastructure for Cernak and including the north is 3 components: Inuit housing in 3 regions. The budget for 16-17, 35 million, 17-18, 45 million, and in this fiscal year, 18-19, $40 million included in these supplementary estimates. In addition to that, there is a component on the clean growth, climate change, and we have the detail for that. More than happy to share them with you.
Okay, thank you.
This meeting is now suspended. We're going to switch over. We want to thank the minister and her team. Merci beaucoup, Megwitch. We'll see you next time. Au revoir. Welcome, Minister. We're happy to have you here. And the committee is hearing from you on estimates, and we have some questions for you as well. So I know that MPs are anxious to get started. So please go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the welcome and the opportunity to be with you today. I want to acknowledge that we are gathering for this meeting on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. And it is a pleasure to meet again with the members of this committee. And I would like to start by thanking you for the important work that you are doing. Je vous suis reconnaissant de votre...
I appreciated your report on wildfires and fire safety on reserve. And I look forward to the results of your study on long-term care on reserve.
You know, the Minister of Finance reminded us in his fall economic statement that the Government of Canada is committed to growing the middle class, which means creating an environment for Indigenous peoples to access the opportunities that will enable them to be part of the thriving middle class. It's no secret that those who have faced some of the most severe economic disadvantages in this country for a very long time are Indigenous peoples. And I want to assure committee members that we are hard at work to change this reality for Indigenous peoples in Canada. And we have made good progress in our work to close the socioeconomic gaps for Indigenous peoples, and I will be happy to answer any questions about that progress today.
Today I will be outlining my department's supplementary estimates A, funding which is crucial to address the broad socio-economic gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Canada.
In January of 2018, we identified 5 interconnected priority areas where Indigenous Services Canada plays an important role. These are child and family services, education, health outcomes, infrastructure, and economic prosperity. Although the appropriations in Budget 2018 are reflected in the main estimates of the Treasury Board Secretariat, I would like to take a moment to outline some of the ways that this funding is supporting these priorities. We must address the humanitarian crisis of far too many Indigenous children being taken into care. Budget 2018 provides more than $1.4 billion in new funding over 6 years for First Nations child and family services. We are currently working with Indigenous partners as well as provinces and territories to reform child and family services with a focus on prevention and with the idea of keeping children safe and families together. This includes exploring the co-development of options for federal child and family services legislation and supporting the exercise of jurisdiction over child and family services by Indigenous communities. We must also address the unacceptable health outcome gaps in First Nations and Inuit communities across the country. And to close these gaps, Budget 2018 announced more than $1.5 billion over 5 years starting this fiscal year and $149 million per year ongoing for health programs. This funding will help, among other things, Inuit-specific approaches to prevent suicide and eradicate tuberculosis, and it will also provide resources to address the opioid crisis in First Nations communities. In terms of First Nations education, we know the graduation rates don't match those of non-Indigenous Canadians, and we've made progress on co-developed education policy reform that puts the emphasis on self-determination in education. We have also built and renovated schools and increased funding for post-secondary programs. Another area of priority is addressing the infrastructure need. Both budgets 2017 and 2018 are providing $1.5 billion in funding towards distinctions-based housing strategies, a co-developed First Nations housing strategy, an Inuit-led housing strategy for the Inuit regions of Nunavik, Nunatsiavut, Inuvialuit, and a Métis Nation housing strategy. De plus, le budget de 2018 offre...
As well, Budget 2018 provides $172.6 million over 3 years for clean drinking water on reserve. To date, we are on track to lift all long-term drinking water advisories by March 2021. We have now lifted 75 with 66 to go. This information and all updates on changes to drinking water advisories are available on our website.
Minutes on our fifth priority, that of economic prosperity. The Government of Canada is committed to building a new fiscal relationship with First Nations communities, one that will result in sufficient, predictable, and sustained funding. This relationship will be built on co-created solutions that support self-determination and accountability of First Nations governments to their citizens, and to that end, the Government of Canada agrees with First Nations who have told us that the First Nations Financial Transparency Act needs to be replaced with a respectful approach to the accountability relationship between Canada and First Nations. That is why we are moving forward with First Nations partners on the co-development of a mutual accountability framework, which was a recommendation from the new fiscal relationship report that was produced with the Assembly of First Nations and published in December 2017. My department and the AFN recently established a joint committee on fiscal relations, which will provide advice on this important co-development work. And the recommendations from the committee will be shared starting in spring of 2019. Let me now turn to supplementary estimates A. Services aux autochtones a besoin de fonds.
Indigenous Services Canada requires immediate funds to continue delivering on our mandate of closing socioeconomic gaps and advancing self-determination.
$2.23 billion, which brings the total appropriations for 2018 to 2019 for my department to $10.9 billion. The largest portion of this increase, $1.18 billion, is in Vote 10 grants and contributions, primarily for water and other infrastructure, and for Jordan's Principle. I will touch on three of these initiatives. Funding of $423 million would be provided for the First Nations Water and Wastewater Enhanced Program and to monitor and test on-reserve drinking water. This funding is critical to build on our priority work in this area. Projects like the water treatment plant upgrades and repairs and the training of operators through the Circuit Rider training program are supported by this funding. Jordan's Principle ensures that all First Nations children have access to the health and social and economic or education products and supports and services that they need when they need them. Funding of $323 million will support care delivery under Jordan's Principle. And since its inception, the reach of Jordan's Principle has expanded to apply equally to all First Nations children living on or off reserve. And from July 2016 to September 2018, more than 165,000 requests for supports and services were approved under Jordan's Principle. And to assist with the infrastructure crisis in First Nations communities, we are requesting $287 million in funding through these estimates. The funding would address critical infrastructure needs, including housing, and help communities plan in accordance with the construction cycle. With this funding, communities would be able to explore innovative and new approaches to meet their housing and infrastructure needs. These supplementary estimates, A, should they be approved by this committee, would make a direct difference in people's lives in a manner that advances reconciliation. I thank you for this opportunity, and I am pleased to take your questions.
Thank you so much, and we'll start off with MP Mike Bossio.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Minister. It's always a treat to have you come to our committee, and we do get to see you quite often, so we appreciate that. And you know, also, of course, the comments. I mean, what a phenomenal record you've had so far in this role, and your ability to get things done is really commendable. Minister, I know that you attended a meeting last week with youth from the Anishinaabe Aski Nation, and I think you would agree that there's an amazing generation of young Indigenous leadership that's emerging in Canada. I know in my own Mohawk territory, I'm so impressed every time I go to the Mohawks, the Bay of Quinte. The more and more youth are becoming more and more engaged at all levels, right? In all issues. but despite facing some challenging circumstances, these young people have proven themselves to be resilient and innovative. Could you update the committee on how Choose Life has impacted the lives of youth in remote communities in Northern Ontario? And more broadly, could you speak to the impact of Jordan's Principle, which you were just talking about, has had for First Nations youth across the country?
Thank you very much for the question and for your generous words. I would point out that any success that we have managed to achieve has been a collective effort working across government, across all parties, across First Nations, Inuit and Métis leadership in this country. So we're thankful that we're starting to see some really great progress. The meeting last week with the youth from Anishinaabe Nation was an extraordinary meeting. They were all so inspiring and enthusiastic and bright and articulate. They met with the Prime Minister, which they, of course, were delighted to be able to do. But they talked specifically about some of these things that you've mentioned. And one of them that I really would be happy to share is this program called Choose Life. One of the great things about Choose Life is that it was actually designed by the youth of Anishinaabe Nation for the youth of NAN. And it was a reaction to the very high rates of suicide. And they said, we know what our youth need to build hope and resilience. Can we plan a program that we believe will actually make a difference in young people's lives? And they placed requests for funding through Jordan's Principle that we were able to support. Well, this has taken off in an incredible way. There are now 47 of the 49 nations that are using this, and it's a program that has been incredibly successful in building hope. It includes a range of approaches, including, for example, spending time with elders, learning about traditional ways, learning about the history of their peoples, and building that cultural resilience. There's also opportunities for outdoor education where they go out on the land, on the rivers, they learn about hunting and fishing, and it really builds up that, what Minister Bennett always likes to call the secure personal cultural identity, which is so valuable to people actually being able to have that strong self-esteem. The youth said themselves, this is making a difference and this is saving lives, and they pleaded with the Prime Minister that they would be able to continue this program. I could go on at some length about some of the other great things that Jordan's Principle is doing in Manitoba, where the chair is from, for example. It's an entirely different program that's been designed called My Child, My Heart, but again, really led by First Nations, for First Nations, totally changing the lives and prospects of these young people.
I'm not surprised. I mean, when our committee was studying the youth suicide crisis a couple of years ago, you know, I'm not surprised. We were in Sioux Lookout, and once again, the youth were just absolutely remarkable. How resilient they were, how creative they were, and as you said, innovative as well. Minister, I understand that Choose Life is a program designed specifically to support the youth living in NAN communities. Can you elaborate on how this program has influenced the experience of First Nations youth in Northern Ontario? How might they expand upon it to better support them? Or how might we better, expand upon it to better support them?
I think that's a great question, and I think this is leading to many, many other possibilities, and it's also linking very nicely with another piece of some of the investments that we're making around health transformation. So colleagues may be very interested in knowing that just like the model that we have seen working so well in British Columbia, the British Columbia First Nations Health Authority, there are opportunities now across the country to see health systems changed and improved because they're delivered through an approach of self-determination. Anishinaabe Nation is actually working, has brought on Ovid Mercredi, who may be known to many around the table as a former national chief, to lead the process of health transformation, and they are looking at going beyond just Choose Life, but looking at how they might ultimately be able to build, design, build, manage a health system, health authority perhaps, that will go in that same spirit of saying, we understand what our people need, we understand what quality improvement looks like in healthcare, we want to be put in charge of this, and we are seeing already some very positive work in that direction.
Wonderful. 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute left. I'll try to get to this one quickly. I'm looking beyond the scope of Jordan's principle for First Nations youth. We know that Inuit youth face a different set of practical realities based on remoteness. Minister, could you share with the committee some of the barriers Inuit children face receiving care and how Child First initiative will make the provision of health and social services easier?
Thank you for bringing that up. So as we have seen the way that Jordan's principle has brought access to health care and services to First Nations young people and really had a profound impact on people's lives, we have heard from others, particularly Inuit, that they in fact have faced the same challenges where they are often having jurisdictional issues in terms of getting resources paid for. Sometimes there are particular things that they can't get support for. Some of these children are facing multiple handicaps, multiple disabilities that get in the way of them being able to enjoy quality of life. So they've asked us to work directly on an Inuit-specific approach that would be similar to Jordan's principle, but designed by Inuit for Inuit, and they're calling it the Child First Initiative.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Minister.
We're moving now to MP Arnold Viersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being here today. Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about your mandate letter is the accountability aspect of it. There's heavy emphasis on transparency and accountability. Over the summer, however, the PBO did a report talking about the federal departments and agencies responsible for $14 billion being spent through the phase 1 of the Investing in Canada plan. One of the things that they noted was that your department was unable to provide a plan or a breakdown of where that money was being spent. Is there a reason for that, and has that money been available now?
Thank you for the welcome, and I'll ask my Chief Financial Officer to respond to that.
Thank you very much for the question. The reason for why the PBO did not get access at that point in time was requisite Government of Canada internal approvals associated with that funding had not been secured as of yet, and therefore we did not have the level of detail of information that the PBO had provided, and then post the approvals that were sought, which were obtained near the end of August, we subsequently then was able to provide that to the PBO. It was a timing issue. That being said, the Minister has already referenced the fact that there is an infrastructure interactive map which does disclose to Canadians where infrastructure money is flowing by First Nation, by project class.
Okay, and how much money is in that plan, in the Invest in Canada plan for your department, and how much has been spent so far?
So I'll ask I'll ask Paul to give you specifics on that. But if I can just first of all, hopefully you have this brochure with you, and if you turn on to the second page, there's a Mapping the Way Forward in First Nations Communities, and it points to the website that I encourage you to look at. It's really interesting to see where infrastructure is being built and where these funds are being spent. It's quite impressive, and I welcome your feedback on that, and I'll ask if Paul wants to answer the specifics in terms of how much has been spent to date.
Thank you again for the question. So, in terms of start off in terms of commitments, a total of 3.06 billion was committed for Indigenous Services Canada under the Invest in Canada Plan Phase 1, divided as follows: 1.83 billion over 5 years in water and wastewater infrastructure, 416.6 million over 2 years for on-reserve housing, 76.9 million over 2 years for cultural and recreational centres, 319.9 million over 5 years for health-related infrastructure, including Aboriginal Head Start, and finally 408.9 million for solid waste management on reserve. As of June 30th, 2018, after 2 years of programming, more than 2.25 billion of these overall infrastructure funding has been invested to support 3,385 infrastructure projects across the country. Of that amount, 1.58 billion is part of the Invest in Canada Plan Phase 1.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. One of the issues that's being raised from my constituents is around banned elections. And I'm just wondering, I got two bands in particular, Tall Cree and also the one in Wabasca, have had inconsistencies. And I'm just wondering how the new department moving forward is going to deal with band elections and how band members who are concerned about irregularities, how they can address that.
I appreciate your question and encourage you again, if you ever have any specific things that come up on a day-to-day basis in the House, I'm always happy to hear from members from any party to come speak to me directly if you have a question on a specific issue so that you don't have to wait till I come to committee or of course send me a note. But on this specific question, there are each band, there's some matter of discretion in terms of what their election processes look like according to the bylaws and regulations of the band. For the most part, elections run quite smoothly. From time to time, there are concerns or challenges or issues raised. When these concerns are raised, I immediately always ask my department to reach out, see if there's anything that we can do to help. But more often than not, these issues are addressed within the band themselves according to the rules that they have put in place to govern themselves and to govern the election processes. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that.
Just want to
Sonny?
maybe add that over time, in order to move First Nation from under the Indian Act, there has been provision that have been created for bands to set their own election rules and processes. Unfortunately, some, through a self-determination process, have taken this road. For those who have decided to stay under the Indian Act, the department under the Indian Act have authority in the statutory process for us to investigate. But this doesn't apply to those who have taken the responsibility or their election rules.
Okay. Minister, I've been hard on you on this in the past, and so I'm going to go at it again. Around the Financial Transparency Act, we currently are living in a weird situation where the rule of law is not being respected in Canada. The last time that many of the First Nations in my riding have disclosed their financial documents was in 2014-2015, and since then those are still up on their websites, but we haven't seen anything since. Will you be repealing the Financial Transparency Act so that we don't live in this weird spot where we are living outside of the law?
Thank you for the question, and I know this is an issue that interests you, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to refer to it in my opening remarks, and to let you know once again that we are working on a new fiscal relationship that's a relationship based on mutual accountability and respect, and a nation-to-nation or government-to-government type of relationship. Because of the issues that you've raised in the past, I've had many conversations with Paul about this my other senior officials about this matter, and I have asked them to specifically look at some of the questions that you have put forward. We know, I think what you're getting at is, can Canadians be confident that federal public funds are being expended accordingly? Is there accountability? And I want to reassure this committee and Canadians that in fact we have, long before the Fiscal Transparency Act came into place, this department has had a robust process to assure accountability.
But what about the band?
I'm sorry, MP Viersen, we've run out of time. Gave you a little bit extra because
Thank you.
We're now moving on to MP Rachel Blaney.
Thank you so much for being here, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take a moment just to make sure that everyone knows that I'll be doing a notice of motion that pursuant to Standing Order 108(2), the committee devote 4 sessions to study the forced sterilization of Indigenous women, that the committee, as part of that study, invite the Indigenous Services Minister to appear for no less than 1 hour to brief the committee on the government's efforts to immediately end this practice, that the meeting with the minister be televised, that the study be scheduled to begin no later than February 2019, and that the committee report its findings to the House. Thank you so much. So thank you for coming today, Minister. I certainly hope to see you again here to talk specifically about Indigenous women and sterilization. I know from many people across Canada that have contacted me, they're very concerned and distressed that this is still happening as recently as 2017. Some of the questions that I have for you as a person who represents a more rural and remote riding in Canada, when we talk about children going into care and really having a leadership role for the communities, one of the challenges is the fact that those communities are so small. And I've had a few of them come talk to me because they've tried to come together and create a plan strategically over a large area, as you can imagine, to work together to make a strategy, but they're not getting any support to do that. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be any resources to really address this issue and address it from these really small and rural remote communities.
Thank you very much. And I'm just wondering if you can clarify the specific issue that the communities are struggling to address is around children in care. Are you asking about? Okay, so this is different. You're not.
That's right.
You started off on course sterilization, so
yep, and then I
changed.
moved on.
Okay,
yep.
So absolutely, working on trying to keep families together, to support family preservation, to support children in need. There are a number of ways that we support communities in this area, and I would be happy to provide either directly or through my staff further information on what can be done. If there's
is there any specific models for more rural and remote communities that have been successful that you're
There have been many
right
models that are successful. Jordan's Principle funding is one of the ways.
So when you look at Jordan's Principle, one of the challenges, of course, is that communities are dealing with a lot of challenges. I also will be talking about suicide here, but when you look at the smallness of some of these communities, the crises that they're facing in terms of having their children taken into care, really not having the resources, sometimes kids going far away, to apply for something like Jordan's Principle might be the very last thing that they can make themselves do because they're trying to deal with the crisis. So what kind of supports are you giving to communities when they're in these kind of crises to help them do things that are applying for other funding and resources?
So I'll come to some of the other ones, but if I can just say on Jordan's Principle specifically, it has a very strong support system built into it with a 24/7 helpline. We support directly to leadership in communities to make sure that they know how to access Jordan's Principle funding. But if I may, I would also like to add details about the $1.4 billion in new funding that we got access to, that was provided in Budget 2018, specifically for the kinds of things that you're talking about. I would need to get some details on you as to the names of the specific communities, because some of them work with the First Nations Child and Family Services Agency, and we've made it very clear to those agencies that we will pay the actual costs that it takes to prevent the apprehension of children. So that's one of the mechanisms to work through those agencies. Where that's not, where there isn't a First Nations agency in the community, there is also funding for something called Community Wellbeing Initiative that we provide support to the communities directly to find out what the needs are, again, to prevent the apprehension of children. And I'd be very happy to have my team work directly with these communities and be able to find out other ways that we can support them. It's not a question of not having the resources to do so. We are continuing, as we did with Jordan's Principle, now with the new funding for preventing apprehensions. There's work to be done to make sure everybody knows that it's there, and then, as you say, to really support the communities so that they can actually get access to what's available.
So in the spring, the Auditor General did the report, and it really talked about some serious concerns around the measurements of well-being not being very comprehensive. The Indigenous communities, the First Nations communities were not engaged with to measure properly, inaccurate reporting on education. I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how that's being addressed, and around education specifically, when is there going to be more resources for education? I'm getting a lot of calls from Indigenous communities within my riding that are still seeing the cap, and they need it gone. And I'm just wondering when that's actually going to happen.
Well, as you know, we have made significant new investments in education. This was actually brought in initially under the leadership of Minister Bennett with $2.6 billion for education. We're continuing to see that funding roll out. There will be more rolled out in next fiscal year. And we are also working at a region by region level to make sure that we are going to achieve not only equity in terms of what a First Nation on Reserve education funding would be as compared to provincial funding, but actually what we are achieving is equity plus, so that the communities will get the same as their provincial standard, plus additional resources for culture and language training, for special education, and for all-day kindergarten for 4- and 5-year-olds. So again, the specifics of your exact community, there is outreach from the department to regions and from regions into communities, so everyone knows how much more funding is coming next year. I suspect that you may be amongst the communities that is going to see further additional investments next year, and we're going to achieve that equity plus.
So I only have 1 minute left. I'm just wanting to hear a little bit more about the work that's been done around suicide. We know that in northern Quebec recently we heard that there was 31 deaths this year alone due to suicide. Several communities are facing multiple suicides in their communities. I don't want to name them all because they are frankly too many. I think of one of my communities recently where a young man hung himself from the bridge in the community. So this is something that continues to happen. I'm just wondering, you talked about Jordan's Principle, but how are you actually going out to the communities to support them through these crises? I can't even imagine a community losing 31 people by suicide in 1 year.
Well, it's hard to do justice to that really important question in a short period of time, but, and I know that the committee has done an entire study on this, which was a fantastic study. As it relates to northern Quebec, I would point you to the work that's been done through the National Inuit Suicide Prevention Strategy, which is one of the best suicide prevention strategies I've ever seen. And Nunavik is the land claim region in northern Quebec that is working alongside the provincial government to make sure that those youth get access to the services they need. But that National Inuit Strategy, I think, points to the levels of saying, yes, you need the emergency workers to go in, but you have to build in all of those other layers of addressing social determinants of health, etc., in order to eventually build hope and fairness for communities. Sorry.
We need to move our questioning now to MP Will Amos.
Thanks again, Minister, for joining us, and to your officials. I would second Mr. Bossio's comments. I really appreciate your leadership. I appreciate how you've tackled the splitting of the department, and I think it's bearing fruit. Specifically, your comment about having lifted 75 long-term drinking water advisories with 66 more to go. That's a major achievement. Certainly, there's a ton more work to do, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak a bit more about that work. And in so doing, I wanted to highlight what I think many Canadians perceive to be an unfortunate reality, which is that while certain long-term drinking water advisories are lifted, others are added then. And so there's a bit of, there are some challenges around that. Could you speak a bit more to that issue?
Thank you very much for raising the question, and you're absolutely right. This is a matter that is of interest to all Canadians. I think everywhere I go in the country, I'm amazed by the fact that it's not just Indigenous peoples, but non-Indigenous Canadians are really seized with the need to make sure that there's access to clean drinking water for all Canadians. We have made progress that I'm grateful for, and it's good news to celebrate. There is still more to do, but you're right that what we discovered early on that as long-term drinking water advisories were being lifted, we started to see that new ones were being added. And this is something that I became aware of as I was starting in this portfolio. And we had developed a robust plan for every one of those long-term drinking water advisories. But what we hadn't yet done initially was to say, who's at risk? What communities might develop a long-term drinking water advisory? So I'm happy to report to you that we have invested more as well in the area of prevention and extra attention for communities where we believe that their system is vulnerable, provided more resources for vulnerable systems to be able to pay attention before things get too late, and working very directly with communities on making sure that they have the necessary equipment in place, construction equipment, but often it's more than just equipment. It's what's the operation and maintenance plan for the community? Do they have trained water operators? Are those water operators supported to be able to stay and be retained in the community over the long run? So it's actually requiring a pretty comprehensive approach to this. And I won't say that there aren't setbacks from time to time. Sometimes the timelines get adjusted a bit, but this is something we pay very, very close attention to, and I have to give a shout out to our officials who have really put together a very strong team and made sure that we provide support to communities.
Thank you, Minister. As a follow-up, I've met recently with a constituent, Emma Louie, who is a longtime campaigner for Council for Canadians. She's a longtime water campaigner, and one issue that she raised I thought merits your consideration. Her comment was that there are a number of short-term drinking water advisories that tend to get repeated, and they're not necessarily considered as long-term situations. However, her perspective was repeat short-term ought to be contemplated more as a long-term situation. Do you have any thoughts or response on that?
Thanks for the question. It's probably a little bit difficult to answer in a hypothetical situation because one thing I've learned is that the circumstances of every community are quite unique, and yes, there are some places that have multiple short-term advisories, and you really need to dig into what's the reality and what's behind that. I often explain to people that, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but in my home in Stouffville, from time to time, there are a lot of potholes on the road where we live, and from time to time they'll be doing road work, and I'll get a little notice on my doorstep saying, don't consume your water for the next 48 hours because we're working on the water mains. So those kinds of things happen all over the country, that there are short-term drinking water advisories that come and go. And from, we had a recent situation where a mudslide contaminated the groundwater in a community and we had to put a short-term precautionary advisory on. Those things will happen from time to time. Even when all long-term drinking water advisories are lifted, there will continue to be short-term advisories. That's the nature of public health and water systems. But you're absolutely right that if we see that a single community is getting a lot of those, that's a sign to the department to say what's going on, is that system going to break down, and Paul and his team are making sure that we've got resources for those vulnerable systems and looking at should we be starting to develop a plan for maybe some upgrades to the system or sometimes even a brand new system.
Okay, thank you. Before my time is up, Minister, I wanted to make a positive statement about a particular issue that is being handled by your department in my riding, and I think that members of my constituents in my riding would want to know this and would want this to be on the public record. Your department has been discussing with the community of Rapid Lake for a number of months with a view to ending the third-party management that has been in place for many years there. I understand those discussions have reached a successful conclusion, and that this really then opens the door to some really important work, which goes to the infrastructure conversation that we're having today for the budget. It is of the utmost importance to our whole riding, and not just the community of Rapid Lake, that community receive the housing investments it needs, receive the education, school investments that it needs, and that the power source, the diesel power source that it has been relying on for many years and which is utterly unreliable, that it be replaced and that their connection to the hydro system be achieved. So I deliver that thanks to your department for working on it, and through you to your department officials, please stay on top of it because that issue is of primary concern to the people of Pontiac. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Questioning now moves to MP Kathy McLeod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And unless there's unanimous consent to double my time, I'll have to half it with Mr. Waugh. If you could cut me off at 2.5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. And I'm going to give one example, but I think I really want to say that it represents a lot of examples. And about a month ago, I walked the evening with the Bear Clan, and I saw them deal with a sexual assault where they very compassionately had an escort take this woman to hospital. I saw them dealing with a domestic abuse. I saw people saying, thank you so much for being there. These are large groups of volunteers that are going out in the frigid weather of Winnipeg and doing absolutely incredible work. this is the email that they got $100,000 in 2016-17, and in an email to them in 2017-18, they just were told the proposals were overwhelming demand for funding to address urban Aboriginal issues. As a result, Indigenous Services Canada is not currently issuing a new call for proposals while we work with partners, blah, blah, blah. So basically, we're consulting, and you know, that $100,000 that you got last year is not going to be available this year. I just find that incredible that, and again, I make a point when I'm in cities across this country to see what our urban Aboriginal organizations are doing, and to be frank, I think they're the forgotten cousins. So I guess let's talk about this. How can your department, when these guys are going out and dealing with, you know, they're picking up needles, they're looking for people that are frozen behind garbage dumps, there's hundreds of them, and they're told, there's not $100,000 for you to maybe have someone that's going to coordinate this or put some gas in your trucks. I mean, it just, we're spending almost $100 million on an inquiry, and in the meanwhile, we have this group of grassroots, compassionate people doing this. Tell me how your department can just say, so sorry, we're consulting.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for drawing attention to the really great work that the Bear Clan is doing. I am aware of the really important work, and it is one of many outstanding organizations across the country that works with Indigenous peoples in urban settings. And I heartily agree with you that there is more that needs to be done to support these fantastic organizations. You may be well aware of the fact that historically federal governments, including the past one, have not had major investments to support programming for Indigenous peoples in urban settings. It's a reality. I am happy to say that we continue to increase the funding for urban programs for Indigenous peoples, that the funding has been significant and has supported a large number of programs across the country, including the work of many friendship centers, which do great work. There is a need for more. I acknowledge that. As it relates to Bear Clan, I'm happy to have heard, as you heard, that they have found a solution in the short term with money that's come from the provincial government, which I think is fantastic. I think all orders of government have a responsibility to address the needs of Indigenous peoples in urban settings, and this is a good thing when we're working together with other orders of government, and we are looking for ways to do more in the future, and I'd be happy to hear your suggestions.
MP Waugh.
On page 6 here, you talk about education, the Manitoba Schools Initiative, Winnipeg, Lake Winnipeg School Bundle, and the Northern Ontario School Bundle. Are these one-offs, or do we actually have a national plan that we can celebrate? I mean, I see these three. I talked to several other in this country, and they're envious of these three, to be honest with you, and they want to know if you have a national plan.
Well, thank you for the question, and I'm happy to, well, I guess there's good news and bad news. The bad news is that there is a lot of lost time that we are making up for in terms of investments for education on reserve. I'm happy to say that we have made very significant investments, and we do, in fact, have a planning approach, whether it be around educational infrastructure or healthcare infrastructure, that the capital needs across the country on reserve are significant. So these three that are highlighted here are some of the areas that do have some of the most significant needs. I was delighted to be in Manitoba just a couple of weeks ago to celebrate with the 4 chiefs of these 4 communities that are part of the Manitoba Schools Initiative $248 million in funding that's going to see new schools in each of those communities plus an upgraded school. This will mean there'll be K-12 education in those communities. They will not have to send their kids far away. This is a huge celebration that I hope all Canadians are thrilled about. Yes, there's more to do. We look forward to further announcements on some of these other bundles that are to come. There is going to be more work to do after that. This is an area that unfortunately has not had attention, and I hope that all parties will support further investments. Call for more investments. This is an incredibly important thing to build schools so every child in this country has access to go get a good education with good teachers and to be able to see that these schools are built. There will be more announcements in the months to come.
now are moving for a short portion, because we have motions to pass, to MP Yves Robillard.
Madame la Présidente, et
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Minister for the excellent presentation today. I understand that you were recently in Manitoba to celebrate the signing of a contract to build 4 schools so that young people can finish their high schooling in their home environment. Now, Minister, could you speak about the efforts done by your department to improve education from K to 12 for young Indigenous youth? Thank you very much for the question, and as I've said, we had an extraordinary announcement that was made 2 weeks ago in Manitoba with respect to the new buildings for the schools, $248 million for 4 communities, for 5 schools. And also there was support for the teachers as well.
There was, I didn't get a chance to give all the details in my previous answer, so I'm happy to report that we were also able to respond to some of the requests around what they call teacherages, which is maybe a term that people aren't familiar with, but it's housing for teachers to live in. So what I hear from time to time across the country is communities can't recruit teachers to these remote communities because there's no place for teachers to live. And so some of these communities said that that was part of what they really needed, was not only a new school but a place for teachers to live, and we were able to respond to that part of the request as well. So we believe that this will build not only a great place for students to go to school, designed in a way that is respectful and culturally appropriate, but that will also attract teachers who will want to stay in those communities. And I cannot tell you how happy those chiefs were. It was, Dan can attest to just literally just tears of joy and happiness, realizing what this means to their communities.
thank you.
Obviously, we have a lot of questions and interest, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. On behalf of all of the members of the committee, we really appreciate you taking the time to come out and answer our questions. Merci beaucoup. Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we're just going to suspend because we've got to go through a number of votes on estimates. So we'll let the minister and staff leave, and then we'll get on with business.
Sorry, I didn't mean to tell you what.
Public and televised.
Oh. We stay in public and televised. Okay. All right, let's get going. We have a number of votes. Shall vote 1A under the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development carry? Shall vote 5A under the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development carry? Shall vote 10A under the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development carry? Shall vote 1A under the Department of Indigenous Services Canada carry? Shall vote 5A under the Department of Indigenous Services Canada carry? Shall vote 10A under the Department of Indigenous Services Canada carry? And shall I report the supplementary estimates A 2018-19 to the House? Oh, harmony. All right, one more issue or just a little notice for our next report. I want to remind members to put in their witnesses. It's going to be capacity. You got some motions.
So,
You got motions. Shall we discuss those motions at the next meeting?
Yeah, I was going to say, Madam Chair, I mean, I think it would be prudent of us to have a conversation around next steps. We have a number of motions, and to be frank, I don't recall sort of prioritizing the one that you're talking about, so it would be good to
We
have
will
a
put
general
that on the
discussion.
agenda so we have committee business. All right. Thank you very much. Adjourned.